So I got Dishonored on a deep sale during the Steam Summer Sale. I got it for like $1. I've played it for like an hour, did the intro mission, um, and I played it on the Steam Deck here, just out in the little backyard oasis that we have. And it's like, it, I felt compelled to turn the camera on and talk about just how games have changed um, over the years. At some point, everyone, every studio and developer got so hyper fixated on building the largest world, or the world that you could sink all of your time doing repetitive tasks into, that they forgot to make the games really fun and entertaining. And especially when you go back and play older games, you can see the difference between then and now. And I don't know if it's because everyone's trying to figure out the cheapest way to make a game and to then um, just squeeze the gamer for more money, right? Because of, I don't know if it's investors that demand that constant profit gain or what. Um, but it's becoming very painfully apparent that these studios, the people that actually made the golden era of the studios, have left, and that is why we have just what I'm going to refer to as zombie studios. They're the walking husks of a once great era. The company like Bethesda, I never thought, especially during the 360 PS3 era, that Bethesda would be what it is today, putting out uh, major duds and focusing on game monetization. But that's like every big studio now. And I'm not turning the camera on to it'd be all doom and gloom on the major AAA releases these days. I mean, it is what it is, and I've come to accept that. What I am gonna say is, like, this is where gaming is, and I see where gaming used to be. And I talked about this in one of my more recent videos, where games used to be sold as a complete package, and you would just pop it in and play it, and DLC was actually fairly priced, whereas nowadays we are actually playtesting for them. So companies are not only saving money in playtesting, they're saving money on manufacturing by creating mostly digital releases, or doing as little as possible to actually manufacture a disc or a physical thing, and then making it a simple download key for your system or whatever. The disc is just your license, which is crazy. But they're saving money on that, but they're wanting to charge extra for the game itself when they've already saved a bunch of money. So cut costs on the back end, and on the front end charge the consumer more, and say and talk about lies about how, oh, games are so expensive to make, when you have engines out there, that indie studios that are running laps around you. Like, the AAA model just doesn't make sense, and live service is actually a cancer that I think will soon be cut out, because how many live service games have fallen short of the mark that they have hyped up, and have since closed. Like, there have been too many to count. Like, it seems like every single time I look at YouTube, gaming YouTube, that is, it's just like some studio is closing, or there's some new controversy because some game came out half baked and closed its doors. This live service game that was supposed to be for years closed up shop and ceased activity. It's actually kind of interesting and crazy. Um, but single player games are not a place to put those practices, right? Always online for a for a single player title is insane. Day one DLC for in-game currencies for a single player title to get items or skins is absolutely insane to me. And I don't know where that became the norm. It was within the last 10 years, obviously. But it's one of those things that you go back and you play a game like Dishonored, and you see that it was just a video game that focused on fun and story, and I'm already hooked and into the mystery. It didn't take long to set up. I'm hooked. I like the gameplay. I am compelled to keep playing more. And in an era where time is money, and every game is trying to vie for your attention and is trying to boast the longest gaming retention and high player counts. It's quite interesting how simple the formula is, and how most of these companies lost the plots in the vain effort of trying to chase monetization, aggressive monetization. Right? It's no longer enough that you bought the game. Now it is, how do we monetize it as heavily as possible. And it's interesting to think about and see where gaming is going. And with the recent stuff that Sony, the recent controversy that Sony is finding itself in, which I find absolutely hilarious. Um, it's just very topical. It's very topical. But whereas, triple A developers are losing us, I find it very enthralling and inspiring to know that indie developers are what's going to uh, keep the ship afloat. Is going to keep everything going in the right direction, because you'll always have that choice to choose an indie developer. And it's interesting that I just talked about physical versus digital, whereas indie studios predominantly thrive in the digital market because it's so much easier to create your game and then just upload it to a storefront to then have it downloaded by the masses and then played. Right, those indie studios thrive predominantly because they don't have to spend money on manufacturing. However, the flip side of that, especially like a storefront of Steam, is like they've already announced, like somewhere deep down in the past, Gabe Newell had already said there are plans that if something were to happen and Valve as a corporation were to see, there's a spider in front of me, were to cease um, existing in the like overnight, there were plans in place where they could just basically click a button and all the DRM for every game on their library, on their storefront, would just be gone, and you could just download the .exes and play them no problem, which I find fascinating, interesting. And again, Steam gets away with with the digital only because they have consumer friendly practices. Like they have the most giving refund system out there. I have never once had a refund that I felt I was owed get denied. Now, there are caveats to that. Like, it's like you can't own a game for more than 30 days and have more than 2 hours played in it and request a refund. There are exceptions to that. I remember I had when Batman Arkham Knight came out on the PC, and that port was absolute trash, unoptimized, like ran worse on hardware that was easily twice of what a PS4 could do. It ran worse than on a PS4. It like I played, I think, 10 hours worth of the game and had it for definitely like a month and a half, and then just threw a Hail Mary like, can I get this actually refunded, because I don't have fun playing the game. And I got the refund. So and even when games get removed from their storefronts, they remain in your library. That's why Steam can get away with being digital only. And that's why it's the most popular storefront. And other companies like Epic, and I'm not going to say GOG. I don't know enough about GOG. I like their mission statement and whatnot, but I'll definitely say Epic. Epic is being clowned on for, or have been clowned on in the past for claiming that they own a monopoly, when it's just that they're better than you, and you have to be better because Steam exists, or Valve rather. And it's just funny to see that. But getting back to indie developers are why horror games are coming back into the fray. Indie developers are what essentially saved Resident Evil. Resident Evil did a soft reboot with Resident Evil 7, and they had to, and they went with that first-person perspective that really hearkened to whatever game that was, Outlast. And Outlast was the first horror game in a while after Resident Evil went all action that really hit a nerve, a mainstream need, and that in ironic twist, that then fed into Resident Evil, and they followed that trope to get back to where we are today. Now, Resident Evil is king. It's my favorite series of all time, and I fully intend to do a video later about my history with Resident Evil, probably right after this, because I am talking now. But indie developers are going to lead us forward. They're always going to. Now, granted, they can always get bought up, but the thing is, and this is very important to remember, is that your game studio, your favorite game studio, is not what makes the greatness. It is the individuals within it at that time. And those people then move, and those people continue taking the experience they have and going elsewhere and making greatness under a different name. And, rightfully so. And that's why we see these AAA studios suddenly, like, going through an era of crap when they were holding a torch through the golden era back in the day. But yeah, video games are alive and well beyond what you see in the headlines and everything. And I've had many a PlayStation fanboy and Xbox fanboy try to clown on me in the past because I am a PC gamer. I definitely remember when the whole thing that PC gaming is dead was going through in like late 2000s, early 2010s, because the 360 and PS3 were more affordable and still played games as good as PCs. But I've never once had to pay for PS Plus or Xbox Live to play my game online. The savings on the back end and the freedom I have with the games that I buy is ultimately what makes me love the platform. And I get it. Not everyone can afford a PC. I'm sure if given where we're at now, if people could afford it, they would buy it in droves. But, and it's only going to get worse now, unfortunately, with AI. Unless, unforeseen circumstances come through and legislation's passed or whatever, or actual open revolt takes over and AI falls, then the price of components are only going to keep getting heavier. But also, I've noticed in market trends where motherboards now are being sold at heavy discounts because no one's building PCs anymore. So whereas inventory on one side of the PC build is in demand and very expensive, other components are now a lot cheaper than they would have been. So maybe things balance out. I don't know. I keep looking around at like pre-built PCs on Best Buy, and I see those prices, fluctuating quite a bit. Like they're staying honestly kind of stagnant, like in an ideal range kind of way from what I'm seeing. I've only looked a little bit. I'm not keeping like my ear to the ground on it or anything like that, or keeping my finger on the pulse. But either way, this is going off the rails. What I wanted to say is that video games are in a really good spot, and if hardware sales don't continue on, what I will say is optimization is going to be a key factor moving forward for these studios. They can't just put out slop that looks marginally better than games 10 years ago, but yet takes up hundreds of gigabytes and like does not and requires the newest and greatest hardware. I don't know about anyone else here, but this is my hot take, and that is that ray tracing is overrated. Ray tracing is absolutely overrated. I don't notice much of a difference, and it just tanks the performance. I don't care from a technical standpoint that you can see a ray of light in real time get bounced off a floor. I play games from 10 years ago, and I'm like, this looks beautiful. I play games from today, and I'm like, they look beautiful. Like, this game looks beautiful. What's the difference? One's 50 gigabytes more to 160 gigabytes more on my hard drive than the other, and I have the same amount of joy from both. It's very interesting, and that's just how my mindset works and how I weigh that. But this is a hobby that I've loved since I was 1 year old, and I'm going to continue talking about it because it brings me joy to do so. And unfortunately, this thing, thanks to AI, is super expensive, but I would recommend anyone get a Steam Deck because it is a fantastic piece of hardware. And unfortunately, now it is almost double the price of, of what it used to be, thanks to AI. So, I don't know. This video has kind of gone off the rails, but I love gaming, and I'm going to talk about it more. So, guys, until the next time, my name is Ken, and I will see you then.